I tell you, it's a common error that people make moving into television, is that they write for newspapers or they write for radio. Now, the basic thing there is they will always talk about pyramid format, i.e. most important fact first, and then decreasingly, the facts of decreasing importance, so it can be cut from the bottom. That works in newspapers and it works in radio. It doesn't work in television. And here, television and radio work the same way, up to a point. There are only, we speak on average 3 words a second, on average. So, for us to do a 20-second underlay, that would be me speaking over pictures. That's 60 words. You've got to tell a story in 60 words. If you can think of the Herald newspaper, what we do in that half-hour programme would fill no more than a page and a half of the Herald. So the Herald's got all that detail. Keep it concise. Keep it very, very concise. That applies to radio and TV. The difference between radio and TV, and I'll give you one example. I remember doing a court case once, fairly soon after I started in TV, and it was a horrendous torture case. Some people had been, teenagers had been torturing another kid. And as they left the court, there was all this banging in the prison van and all the rest of it, with good pictures. But to me, the story was, as a journalist, the story was the sentence, the fact that these people had been convicted and sentenced. So I started with a shot of the court. Now, I shouldn't have. The story I should have started with was the people banging in the van, protests outside the jail, because it's the most dramatic picture. But it changes how you approach the story. Does that make sense? You're not just telling the fact of the conviction, you're telling the fact of the drama outside the court, because that's what the pictures are. So, when you're doing your show reel, don't just write words and then put pictures over them. Get your pictures and think how your words explain what. Add to the pictures. And don't just say, the man walked down the street, because you can see the man's walking down the street. Add a bit more information to that, yeah? Keep it, and I mean, you guys will have access to far more techniques now, and you know, it's far easier to edit your own show reels, and fast, snappy, but authoritative as well. Don't try and be wacky, yeah?
What kind of pay and charges do you expect from either in print or TV?
It's not a lucrative industry at all. It's not, and it'll take, well, once you've maybe, after a number of years, you may do very well for yourself. But to start off with, no, it's probably the biggest complaint of the people I work with, that their salary is not great. You're talking about, starting off, it can be as low as high teens. Maybe even, no, it's probably about high teens now. Possibly fairly, in local newspapers is even less than that. I think it would, yeah. It's not a lot in local newspapers. Sorry, I was talking particularly in relation to television. People assume they come into television, all of a sudden you're getting paid a lot, and you don't. Maybe after a few years, you're up to the mid-20s. And that'll improve over the years, of course. But it's not a lucrative industry. Don't think of it in those terms. It may become so if you do well. But, and again, just the girl I was talking to this morning, the girl who's doing an internship with her, she said a lot of her friends had pursued, you know, it was money was the most important thing in terms of the job. And she said even now already, and this girl's 21, I think, 22, she was saying that a lot of her friends are already dreading going to work and hate it when their holidays are over. But she doesn't. She doesn't get a lot of money. She has the potential to earn more further down the line. But she loves getting up every day and coming into her work. That's where you would be a journalist, not for the money. And again, you know, you were talking earlier on about balancing hours and family and all the rest of it. If money is the issue, the reason you should come in, if you're interested in journalism, the reason you should come in is for the experiences that you wouldn't normally have, for the people that you wouldn't normally meet, for the buzz of hitting deadlines. That's where you do it. You don't do it for money.
So I was found in London and I worked with a political correspondent in ITN, but she had a child. She would get up at 6:30 in the morning, leave the child off to creche, and she'd go back to eat, she'd go back to bed. So I'm just curious, like I love journalism, I love the buzz and everything, but in terms of later in life, you know, is it, especially if you do want to be on the high bucks,
yeah.
I don't think it's compatible. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that, unless you went into the presentation side of things. To be a correspondent, particularly to be a political correspondent, you can't be away from it. You know, you have to be in the heart of that. 5 days a week, 7 days a week. I mean, it's political correspondence. Our political correspondents are chatting to people all times of the day, not necessarily getting a story, just maintaining a relationship with somebody. Candidly, I don't think you can balance the two. For that, certainly for a political correspondent, that's a particularly difficult example. Elsewhere, you might be able to, you know, and people do, particularly at the BBC, where they have a number of correspondent, environment correspondent, whatever. That's easier to do, but politics, I don't see how you can honestly succeed with that. Yeah.
Just wondering what your day involves. Obviously, I don't want to keep you back here. You not be there to present in
Yeah.
What
Well, my day, I tend to do start at 9 o'clock. We have an editorial meeting at 9 o'clock, this discussion about what we're doing that day. And I finish when we come off air at 6:30. So in between that, I can't say it's constant pressure, sometimes it is, but more typically it's bursts of pressure around about bulletin times. Also there's maybe represent the company with things, there's checking wires. Absolutely, there can be periods when it's very quiet. Excuse me. But typically with us, it's at the end of the day, when everybody else's day is dipping down, that's when we have to peak, and you get a real buzz from that. We also started, and this is the bane of my life, to be honest with you, but we're increasingly doing stuff online. So as part of that, somebody came up with a bright idea that I should do a blog. And the idea behind that was that it would show the background to what we do in the news on a daily basis. And it very quickly moved away from that. To the extent that, well, as you can see there, we've got an X Factor club on a Monday. I mean, it's just people talking about the X Factor. It can be as serious, and the one below that is me interviewing the Culture Secretary, Ben Bradshaw, about the future of news.